Hi everyone, welcome to We Belong Education video series. My name is Saurubh Malviya and today I want to talk about perspectives on behavior. One of my favorite topics to talk about. Also, today there's a slight change. I'm also recording this in an audio form so that people can listen to it while driving their car or cleaning dishes if they want to. And they don't necessarily have to look at my face. Among educators, I have been hearing a lot about behavior management workshop training requests, and I often emphasize that my workshops don't focus on behavior management but rather understanding behavior. So I thought, why don't I share a recent story with you all to show the difference between understanding behavior and trying to manage it. Also, talking about this, my workshops, I have my 3 master classes coming up in Sydney on 17th, 18th and 19th of February. I would love to see you or your team or anyone you know who can benefit from a workshop on social and emotional understanding of children's need and of educators' need. So staff resilience is going to be the core of the upcoming workshop. So would love to see you or your team there if you can come in. Well, you can learn more about that through my Facebook page, We Belong Education. Okay, so moving on to the topic of the day, perspectives on behavior. Different perspectives, right? So I'm going to bring a distinct perspectives. Would love to know your feedback at the end of it, as you have been giving me amazing feedback. So love you for that. So let's move on. A few days ago, I was in Gold Coast assisting the service, and as I'm doing running the workshop, educators are sharing with me stories about this particular child. Now, let's say we're gonna name this child Max, if that's okay. And I'm sorry, Max, for all the Maxes out there. I'm sorry. This is just for an example, though. So they're talking about this boy called Max who happens to hit kids, not listen to them, if they're playing, push them and be disruptive, okay? And so therefore he's a misbehaving child, right? So in my previous video, I talked about how when somebody is talking about children and they are sharing their stories with me, I'm always very conscious of the context I'm creating of that child, okay? Because usually I stay back at the service and I give hands-on training. So when I'm having a chat with this child, I do not like to bring those pre-existing disempowered context into my conversation. So please have a look at the previous video where I've talked about that. So, okay, at 3:15, 10 past 3, I see Max walk in to the service and staff members, pointing at Max as they usually do. He's Max. Okay, I'm like, okay, got it, I get it. And now Max walks towards a staff member who is serving afternoon tea. The conversation between Max and the staff member lasts for 2 to 3 seconds, and I can see that Max is disappointed after that conversation, and he walks towards the adventure playground next to the afternoon tea place. Now, I can say that I'm assuming that he's disappointed because of his body language. The way he was walking towards the adventure playground wasn't that motivating or exciting. So now this right now I'm 20 meters away from Max in this story, okay, and next to me is one of the service leaders. So I take permission from the service leader and said, can I just go and have a chat with Max, and I just want to learn more from him. And she said, yeah, why not, let's do it. So I walk towards Max and I sit next to him. And as I'm sitting next to him, I'm looking in the same direction as Max is looking in, okay? I usually do that. I don't sit in front of them because that could be confronting for a child who is meeting me for the first time. So I sit next to Max, looking in the same direction, and now we both are looking at children in the undercover area. Now, one thing I want to add to this, Max is not supposed to sit in the adventure playground. He should be sitting in the undercover area with all the other kids. So that means Max is already doing something wrong, thereby misbehaving, okay? So here's what I want to add, a very important thing to the video. When I have a conversation with kids, I like to describe events happening around us rather than questioning the event. So I'll give you an example, what happened with Max. With Max, instead of saying, why are you sitting over there, or explain me your situation, or give me a justification, I described the event. So how that looks like is, I said to Max, Hey Max, I see a lot of kids sitting in the adventure under the undercover area. That's all. That's what I saw, right? So I described the event, and Max looks at me and he nods. So I knew that Max and I are on the same page. And then I look at Max and I said, "Isn't it?" And he's like, "Yeah." So this time he verbalized it. So I'm like, "Okay." And then I looked at Max and said, "Oh, and you are sitting over here." So again, describing it, not insinuating that he's wrong, just describing it. And I said, "And you're sitting over here." And he said, "Yes." I'm like, "Okay, tell me about it." Instead of why or should you be or all those expectations. Instead of that, I said, "Tell me about it." And I'll tell you why I said these things after I describe the event. Okay, so tell me about it. And he says, when I sit over there with kids, they are quite loud, so it hurts my ears. And I again didn't make it significant. I said, "Okay, tell me about that." And he says, when it hurts me, I hurt other people. And I don't want to hurt other people, therefore I'm sitting over here. So that's interesting, because here we are, let's say assuming that Max is breaking one of the important rules of where he should be sitting, because let's face it, it's hard to supervise at the adventure playground, and I understand the constraint we are working with. So I understand where Max, because it's hard to supervise there, so I totally get it. So he's doing something wrong. So meanwhile, we are assuming that Max is misbehaving. Max over there is trying to self-regulate and not get into trouble. I understand he's going to get in trouble anyways, but that's the two choices Max has. So that's interesting. Now, when I asked the staff members if they knew about this, the staff members said no, they didn't know about that. Max has never verbalized why he sits over there. And then after a few minutes of conversation, this is what I concluded, and therefore I wanted to discuss this in this video, is the function of executive functioning. Now, this rationalizing happens in our prefrontal cortex among humans, and you and I, as an adult, have developed it given the experiences you and I have gone through, whereas kids are still acquiring experiences, and therefore they are acquiring new knowledge and creating through constructivism. I'll talk to you about that later. Through constructivism, their realities. So while Max may not have a rational answer, especially when he's emotionally not happy, he's not going to make a rational decision, which is also right. Okay, so his decisions are going to be irrational, and given a lack of experiences in his prefrontal cortex, he's left with only two choices from where he sees. Number one, either get in trouble by hitting child, or number two, get in trouble in sitting at the adventure playground, and he chooses the second one. So do you see how in this given situation, in the absence of the knowledge why Max sits over there, Max has no way of winning at this service. He will always fail because he will always get into trouble. And if you look at UNCRC, the United Nations Convention on the Right of the Child, it is important that the children have voices. But what sort of voices? We need to really get it. Like, if we are not asking the right questions, if we're not providing the right space to talk to them, we're not going to hear those right voices, or we're not going to necessarily hear what's going on in their mind. And it's a huge practice that you and I should inquire about more and more, so that we can actually hear the what children are actually saying. As per their reality, not as for us. It might still sound silly, but it's very important to know. So what's the solution? The solution is quite simplistic, actually. I recommended that we need to have a quiet area to sit, so that not just Max, but maybe there are other children who might feel similar, feel the same, or may create some contracts among children that what should an afternoon tea look like. Because we may not have the staff member to have quiet areas in afternoon tea, but we can create quiet areas, or we can create a contract among children on what the noise level should be, because these are the same children when they go in the assembly at school, they are quiet. Okay, so they know how to be quiet in a bigger environment. So it's just a matter of us creating a contract with them. So that's solutions. One of the solutions. The other solution was also that I had a chat with Max, and please look at my previous video, because it's a very similar chat I had with the other boy from Sydney. and we talked about how to make rational choices, even in occasions when you're not emotionally happy. Okay, so of course happiness is always emotional, but ignore that word. But when you're emotionally not satisfied, okay, so that's quite important. So I did have a chat with the kid about this, and then I had a chat with the staff members to create a space where he can express himself by being quiet, and the kids around him with similar feelings. So I hope that that this video makes sense, and the takeaways from this video is number one, please remember the pre-existing context and the value of pre-existing context. Look at my previous video where I talked about that. And secondly, when you are talking to children, perhaps look at describing the event rather than trying to figure out everything and impose our logic into their logic. Okay, because in absence of executive functioning, it's not going to necessarily match, and therefore we will be always frustrated, and the kids are always getting into trouble, so they are also going to be frustrated. Okay, so nobody's winning in this. But other than that, I would again like to invite you all, for those who are in Sydney, who can make it into Sydney on 17th, 18th and 19th of February. I have a lot more stories to tell about, to tell you guys from all the schools I have been visiting, and my workshops are full of real life evidence which I keep creating, or keep collecting. And I would love to know your story and see if we can come up with some sort of perspective in which or theoretical perspective through which we can actually counter the situation we are going through. Till then, I would be wishing you all the best till my next video. If I get to see you in Sydney, please make sure that you tell me, as you say hi to me and tell me and give me your feedback on this video. Look after yourself. I love you all, and have a wonderful day ahead.